And right out of the gate, we're getting right to it here from Big 12 Media Days. We appreciate everyone stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. You know where you've found us, the College Football Show. Leave those comments, questions there in the chat. We come your way Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, it's the second day of two. They're close to Dallas, Texas with the Big 12 Media Days. We got Scott Springer on the line, UC Bearcats beat writer, Cincinnati.com. Scott, how you doing today?
Good. I'm in the middle of the field here at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco, and here and turning around, you can see people getting selfies with the football helmets and whatnot. And
There it
I don't know
is.
if you can see all this from. It's
Yeah.
better than looking at me, but there's
Well, let's not say that.
yeah. So they're getting ready to have breakout sessions here back here with some of the players and coaches. All the coaches come up to the podium and they say their 2 cents worth, and then they bring them back here, and there's some repetitive questions and all that. But you see the players come out in their uniforms, and then they dress them up, and it's a big dog and pony show. And by God, there's the West Virginia Mountaineer right there, and he's carrying a rifle. So I'm going to listen to him if he gets near me.
There you go. Well, thanks for giving us some ambiance there, Scott. I did 7 of those straight years at the SEC and the last 2 at the Big Ten. So yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You just, you got to weed through all the coach speak and the player speak to get to something somewhat valuable. So I want to
Yeah,
hit you
right.
from all angles here. Let's go big picture. Let's start with the Big 12. Brett Yormark spoke yesterday. And of course, everybody's focused on the college football playoff format. And he seems to be digging in with this 5+11. Where do you stand on what would be best for the Big 12 and where he stands?
I agree with Brett Yormark because the guy's kind of had a minus touch in a way with everything that he's done, and he's gotten schools like Cincinnati some big money. The Bearcats are a full share member of the Big 12 now, so that means 37 to 42 million of revenue. Whereas when they were in the AAC, it was maybe 7 million tops, and they were partial shares for the first couple of years here in the Big 12 at let's say 18 or so. So it's worked for Cincinnati. He did a great TV deal. I think he's innovative. He might be out there to some, but why not in this day and age when it's all about money? And he has some answers. He's willing to think out of the box and try some things. They had a WWE wrestler, Big E, was here today. I couldn't tell you who Big E was, but now I saw him. It didn't necessarily look really big to me, but it was big enough to wallet me, so I backed off some. But yeah, he has a partnership with World Wrestling Entertainment, and they have talked about naming rights in the past and things like that. So uh, I think wherever he thinks the Big 12 can fit in, I'm with him. He seems to think that they can get a couple teams in that format, if not more, and you never know. It's like they don't have a media poll this year, and that's probably a good thing because they didn't do so well with those in the past. 2 years ago, West Virginia was picked dead last. They won 9 games and won a bowl game. Didn't do so hot last year, but last year was Arizona State picked dead last, and they make the college football playoff in the semifinals. So shows you what the media knows or doesn't know, and truthfully, who knows? With the way everyone flips the roster anymore, you're looking at new teams every year. There's all sorts of new players. Cincinnati has 39 players. I believe I heard Mike Gundy say they had like over 60 new players. You just don't know what you're getting into. And it's just a matter, can you turn all those I's into we's and make yourself a team?
Yeah, it's tougher to make predictions than it's ever been for all the reasons you just cited, but especially in this conference, because yeah, I think that Cincinnati would surprise me, Houston, and maybe a couple others, but nobody else would surprise me winning this conference. And then after Arizona State, after back-to-back 3-9s, maybe
Right.
nobody would surprise me. But,
Right,
but
I agree. I mean, in Arizona State right now some have them as the favorite after last year picking them dead last. So there's not a lot of consistency, but there's no official poll. I know there was between some of the Big 12 writers, they asked to make some picks, and we sent those in. I think 247 had a poll, but anyone that says they know, they don't know.
Yeah, I just trust a few programs out there. I used to trust Mike Gundy, but he couldn't win a game in the conference last year. They were about the worst team we've seen for quite some
Well, yeah.
time.
Well, go
Uh,
figure. And they, 2 years ago, Cincinnati goes down there and they had Ollie Gordon, and he ran all over them. And then he certainly didn't have the year that they thought. They had a quarterback that was in year 7 or something like that, which is what we're running into anymore. You got quarterbacks 26, 27 years old. But yeah, I would not have guessed Oklahoma State to have not won a game. And having said that, I'd be shocked if they're probably going to be a lot better. They're
yeah.
not going to do that again.
Kansas State's probably the safest pick to always be in contention because it seems like they always are.
I agree, and it's a really difficult place to play, and that's dating back to before I did this for a living. I was in radio for nearly 25 years. I was the sideline reporter for the University of Cincinnati. That's back when they let guys do it, because now they have pretty girls do it, and the girls get to stop and interview the coaches, where coaches would run past a guy like me. But Kansas State was a crazy place to play, and I'm sure it still is. So yeah, I would agree that that's a pretty solid pick.
Got Scott Springer on the line, UC Bearcats beat writer, Cincinnati.com, formerly Cincinnati Enquirer. Great wealth of experience here talking Big 12 with us. So let's get down to the Bearcats here. How do you think the transition to the Big 12 has gone? How do you think that most Bearcat fans like or don't like being in this conference?
Those who don't like it really haven't educated themselves, because if you want to say that the AAC was comparable to the Big 12, not even close. And I think they were maybe spoiled with all the great Luke Fickell years there, which came in the AAC. And then I'm here to tell you, even that year where they made the college football playoff and were one of the last 4, that year they had game day at Cincinnati. They hosted Tulsa, not knocking Tulsa, but Tulsa darn near knocked them off, and that would have ruined the whole thing. They happened to have a good run that year, and then they made it to the Cotton Bowl, and then got exposed against Alabama because the games were won up front, and the SEC up front compared to the AAC up front, two different worlds. And I think what Scott Satterfield and the group saw entering the Big 12 was like, hey, we don't really look like some of these Big 12 teams. So the past 2 seasons have been focused on getting that caliber of player, that grade of offense, defensive lineman, and speed and all those things. I think this year, roster wise, it looks to be the best that they've had in some time. So if they're going to make a run, it's really got to be this year, because people are going to get anxious because with all the money involved. So, and the AD has even mentioned, in year 3, it's kind of like in golf, in a golf tournament. On day 3, you make the turn, and who's going to make the turn. And I think he's really anxious to see UC and Satterfield make the turn this year. So can't predict on how they'll do. I would suppose they'd be better. They certainly look better, but we haven't seen them play anyone. We'll see that on August 28th when they have to face Nebraska in Kansas City, and that should be an interesting game. And then after that, Cincinnati has 7 home games, and then the Big 12 schedule. So we'll see what happens there. They can make a statement come August 28th, but I would say for both UC and Nebraska, that game to their fans might seem like really, really important, but I don't think it's the end of the world one way or the other. If you win it or if you lose it, a lot of football to be played after that.
Well, let's stay right there then. Since you brought up the matchup against Nebraska on a Thursday night, that's a nice little showcase for a Cincinnati program here playing the big national game to open the season. And it's kind of strange. Maybe you can explain to us. This game was originally slated for Indianapolis, correct?
Well, originally it was part of a home and home series, and the Cincinnati was supposed to go to Nebraska during the COVID year, and that game was canceled. When the Big Ten initially canceled, the early portion of the season. So it turned into a money game where, okay, let's play it at Lucas Oil Stadium, and Cincinnati will make a buck or two on it. And then what happened was Arrowhead has a group of people who were marketing Arrowhead. And so they came in and said, hey, would you think of moving the game to Arrowhead Stadium? You keep it as your home game. And so the deal is they get 75% of the gate. So you're looking at what, 74,000 times 75%. And they paid the buyout at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. And Cincinnati gets to be the home team, even though there's going to be way more Nebraska fans there. So it basically was a money deal. In this day and age, with all the money that's needed to get players and get things done, it's a money deal. And plus, Cincinnati looked at it as, well, hey, we already have 7 other home games, so why not do this? So is it a home game? Not really. Is it neutral? Not really, because Omaha is about 3 hours away and Cincinnati's maybe 10. But it's a money game. You're on national TV, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, and ESPN, and playing on a Thursday. So a lot of eyes on you. So good time to make an impression. We'll see what happens. Again, if they were to win it, I wouldn't be all crazy about it. If they lost it, I wouldn't lose it either. But obviously, it would behoove them to win the thing, and would certainly help the program.
Well, there's probably hardly a soul out there that does these game by game predictions to add them up and say, okay, so and so is going to finish 7-5, and they're going to finish 5-7 or whatever. That's picking Cincinnati to win this game, but they're only a touchdown underdog according to Vegas. That's
Oh yeah,
a competitive game.
7-point underdog, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that one makes sense. I mean, Nebraska's going to bring the crowd, and Nebraska won their bowl game last year, won the Pinstripe Bowl, and Matt Rule, I think in year 3, if you go back to what he did at Temple, what he did at Baylor, in year 3, he's made a decent stand with his teams. So if you're looking at that, I could see where you would side with Nebraska. And if I were to pick, I'd probably pick Nebraska. I just think the Cincinnati team is maybe a little better than people think. Not predicting them to win the game, but I'd be shocked if it were like a blowout of some form.
And if they do pull off a stunner or just have a good season, even after a loss, you start with Brendan Sorsby, obviously the Indiana quarterback that transferred in. And Evan Pryor takes over at running back. I know that he got a lot of carries last year, but he's the number 1 guy. And Joe Royer is probably a tight end not a lot of people across the nation know about, who caught 50 balls.
Yeah. Joe Royer's really, really good. He's likely your next NFL tight end from the University of Cincinnati. And you're looking at, obviously Travis Kelce, who plays at Arrowhead for a living. And Royer broke his single season record last year for tight ends with 50 catches. And so Royer's been a really good fit. It's a guy that got to come home from Ohio State. He had some issues up there with his mother passing away, and just was dealing with some things. But I think he found himself last year, and he's really good. I saw him as far back as in high school when he was catching all sorts of balls. So Royer's good. You mentioned Evan Pryor. Pryor's certainly going to get his carries. Tawee Walker is the guy they got out of Wisconsin, who looked really good in the spring, and it adds another wrinkle to that game. More of a power back straight ahead guy, but and faster than people think. So the running game, I think, looks solid. The offensive line, they lost Luke Kander to the NFL. He's free agent with Carolina Panthers, but they picked up Joe Cotton out of South Dakota, who apparently when he walked into Scott Satterfield's doorway took the whole thing up, and so they liked him a lot then, like 6'8", 325. So they got some replacements on the line. They had a good year in the portal on paper. Again, I'm not promising you anything, but it just haven't seen the guys see in spring and seeing what everyone else has said about these guys. They certainly look like they have a better roster. So should they be better? Yes, they should.
We're going to try one more question, Scott, because we're starting to lose you. You're breaking up here, but we'll give it another go here because I wanted to hear about the defense with all the experience back at linebacker and, of course, Dante Corleone.
Yeah, a lot of experience at linebacker. Jack Dengle's a starter. They have a guy named Jake Goldie that they got from Central Arkansas last year that really tore it up, and he was a portal find. Jonathan Thompson, and another starter, and they've got a lot of fine young linebackers. And up front, and this was a key last year, Dante Corleone started the season. He had a blood clot in his lung, and so was held out of practice. And so even when he finally got in the second game against Pitt, he wasn't quite himself and really wasn't himself most of the year. So he's back healthy. They had a couple other guys that would have started last year that were hurt early on. So they took some hits injury-wise up front on the defensive line. They seem to be better there. So the defense should be better. Again, you got some new defensive backs that came out of the portal. We'll see how they do. They appear to be better, but you made a coaching change last year. You moved on from your defensive backs coach and your special teams coach, same guy, and they tried to make improvements in those areas. So again, right now, from the spring, on paper, they look better. I'll know a little bit more on August 28th, and obviously, if you talk to me in September, I might have a whole different opinion on these guys. But it appears they've done better in the portal, but everyone else is active in the portal too. So it's anyone's guess.
No doubt about that, especially in the Big 12, anybody's guess. Scott Springer, Cincinnati.com, Bearcats beat writer. Scott, we would love to have you back sometime. Appreciate you stopping by.
All right. Well, you know how to get a hold of me, and maybe the reception might be better from my home office than it is out here in the field with my phone. But
everything was great until the final question. So sounded great, looked great, got a good look at the stadium. All is well.
Well, I wouldn't go so far to say it looked great, but I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Appreciate Scott stopping by, giving us some perspective from Big 12 Media Days. And again, they do 2 days there at the Big 12. Day 2 today. Leanne Herring's down there as well. Have not heard from her today. Hopefully she's getting a lot of good info out of the Big 12, and she'll be able to drop by at some point, whether that be today or later this week. We did have a couple of calls coming in. We certainly are going to prioritize whomever is yet to call in, and we'll take some of your calls. But before we do, we'll dive into the chat. Tukey G's here. 79 Jed Buck, good to see you, sir. Jim R as well. Yes, Big 12 off the top rope. And that's the thing. If you're Brett Yormark and you become commissioner of the Big 10 or the SEC, well, you play the deal different. You play it close to the vest. You play it conservative. You've got all the chips in your corner. But you take over the Big 12, you got to take some chances. You got to be innovative, and he's done that. I think it's a good move for the conference to step forward with 2 of its best teams to play in Dublin, Ireland in week 0. Kansas State and Iowa State, not a typical week 0 type contest. We did see Florida State and Georgia Tech last year, so an ACC conference game, but not necessarily 2 teams that were expected, although Georgia Tech turned out to be better than Florida State. But this more of a marquee matchup in the conference to lead off the season. And then again, Cincinnati steps out there for the Big 12 on a Thursday night against Nebraska. And I got to say, what is Vegas telling us about the Huskers as a touchdown favorite? I don't mean that in a positive way. I mean that in a negative way. If that's Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, even USC, is USC only a touchdown favorite against Cincinnati? So Nebraska has to prove itself. But we are focused in the Big 12 this week. Deion Sanders making some comments about Big 12 status and selling out the stadium for the 3rd consecutive year. So I have not caught too much from the Big 12 Media Days personally. But there we go. Scott Springer repping the Big 12 in Cincinnati. We had a couple interviews yesterday. Of course, Nathan Brown stopped by to talk BYU in the Big 12. And we also had Levi Stevenson talking Iowa State in the Big 12. On Thursday, we've got a few more guests. On Friday, we've got a few more guests from the Big 12. So we're going to hit on TCU and Kansas, Arizona State, Utah, and others. Burks is here. Always good to see. Hello, everyone, except Moose. Ooh, boy. Okay. I need to read before I click. I'll do that. LFG stopping by. Good to see you. And that's what it is, Jim R. These teams are not competing for a national championship. I would be stunned if they do. But if you just want to close your eyes, look at every conference schedule week to week and just say, I want to watch a close game. Just point at the Big 12. Just point at the Big 12. And I don't know that that would necessarily be backed up by the score differential. Like if we took all the games in every conference and we added up the score differential for every game that the Big 12 plays the closest games, they probably do, because there are probably less Ohio State, Northwestern kind of matchups, Georgia, Mississippi State kind of matchups in the Big 12, of course. But it's more about the unpredictability of each game. And as Scott pointed out, 2 years ago, West Virginia was picked last. They went 9-4. And then, of course, the ultimate Arizona State, worst to first in terms of the media poll this past year after 2 consecutive 3-9 seasons. All right. We got Burke showing up to talk some college football with us. Burke, so what's going on?
Hey, what's up, man? How's your day today?
My day's going pretty well.
That's cool, man.
How about you?
Great. I'm actually running the Big Ten 10K on Saturday. It's actually this is the only like conference in college football that has actually a marathon run, and it's in Chicago. So pretty excited. It's my first one, and hopefully I can meet Colston Loveland in Michigan and Kyle Monagai. I think those are the guests for Rutgers, and then
Okay.
I can, do a video and tell them to promote Voice of College Football Rutgers and Michigan channel. It'd be cool.
Oh,
Well,
wouldn't that be phenomenal?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do,
That would be
so.
great, Burks. We appreciate you thinking of us.
Oh, of
Are
course,
you
man, all the
training for
time.
this deal?
What are you saying?
Are you training for this
Oh,
deal?
I already know. I do half Ironman, so like
Okay.
this is nothing. Yeah,
All right.
like
This is nothing.
yeah,
Yes.
it's 10K. So I want to talk. Oh, first of all, shout out to Voice of College Football Michigan for that recruiting watch party of that recruit. It was pretty big. I'm not gonna lie. Got a good amount of people, and they did a good job. I'm not gonna lie. So, that they're doing some good stuff. Voice of College Football Michigan, and um, I do want to talk about actually that recruit. Were you surprised that that Calvin Russell guy chose Syracuse over Michigan?
Well, I was watching like you and others, and I had no lean on this. I don't follow recruiting except for
Okay.
what you hear me talk about on here.
Okay.
So all my recruiting ties are with people that know so much more than I do, that are plugged in. But this is the world of the NIL situation. And even though Minnesota's got Michigan has deeper pockets than Syracuse.
Yeah.
If they're targeting all over the place while Syracuse wants to go all in on a one big player, then you may have those kind of results.
Yeah. No. Here's what I feel, Mark. What's happening in recruiting a lot, and I just feel like I knew from the start Michigan wasn't going to land this guy, and the reason why I was saying it, and a lot of Michigan fans, were thinking they were going to land him, but you know what I realized, Mark, is why would you go to a school like when was the last time Michigan had a 5-star receiver or like a first round receiver? 2003, Braylon Edwards, right? So a long time ago. Why would you commit to a school when they don't? Like we do not know how to use our receivers. Michigan is one of those schools, Mark, where they don't know how to use receivers lately. Like yeah, we got Roman Wilson and a couple of guys who used to be great, and but it took them time. But for being like 1 year and then them just showing out never happens. And I feel like Syracuse, they throw the ball all the time, right? Like how much they were throwing, how much Colin McCord was. I could kind of see why he went to Syracuse, and that's why I was starting to feel like he was going to commit to Syracuse because, Michigan's never got a 5-star receiver since Donovan People-Jones in 2017. So, even with the NIL and stuff, yeah, I heard the offers were similar. The more I'm reading, and you would just like why go to a school when you're receiving. If you're a receiver, you want to go to a school where they throw the ball. If there's a team that runs the ball more, you want to go to a school that runs the ball more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I'm going to look up some numbers on Calvin Russell while we continue this conversation because what you're saying makes sense, except
Yeah,
if you're that good. So we're talking about a top 20 player in the nation. We're
yeah.
talking about a top 3 wide receiver in the country. So if Michigan is not the destination, then because of all the things that you just cited, they've not developed NFL wide receivers at a high level, they
Hmm.
don't throw the ball much, all
Yeah.
of that. He's got other options. It's not like he's a 3-star looking at Temple, Rice, and Houston. You know, he could go just about anywhere he wanted. And the thing about Syracuse that might be fool's gold, we got to see that it's not like he's going to play at USC with Lincoln Riley, who's got this long established history of working with quarterbacks and receivers in this illustrious offense that has proven itself over and over. Brand Brown shows up at Syracuse, and he may have just landed in the right situation that season with Kyle McCord and the receivers that they had. That remains to be seen because what Mr. Russell's going to be working with, at least in the interim at Syracuse, is going to be the likes of Ricky Collins, who has no experience, who was at LSU and Purdue before landing at Syracuse, is most likely going to be the starting quarterback, and Steve Angeli, who could not win the job at Notre Dame, versus working with Bryce Underwood, who seems to be a star in the making.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And it's just like, we've had so many good receiver recruits that we've just wasted our potential because they don't know how to use the receivers, Mark. I'm telling you, we've had this guy named AJ Henning who was a top 100 recruit.
Sure.
They didn't use him. He went to Northwestern, 600-700 yards, like a season he had. I think 600 yards at Northwestern, when he had like almost 0 yards passing. Like he only had like a couple less than 100, felt. And then also Darius Clemens, right? He was a top 100 recruit. We got him, and he couldn't really. I don't know what they were trying to do with him. Couldn't get the field much. Went to Oregon State, and that's what I'm feeling. That to land a 5-star like a school like Michigan, they need to see Bryce Underwood throw the ball and actually have receivers actually get good amount of yards until we can get a 5-star recruit. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Again, this Calvin Russell situation might just be a little bit different. But if he was looking solely at his NFL development and working with an offense that's going to showcase that, and I would applaud that. If that was more important than the money, I would applaud that approach. But I don't know that Syracuse is the right landing spot if that was his number one priority.
So you're telling me that if it was for the NFL, you would feel like Michigan would be the better choice, or you would feel
No,
Syracuse
I'm
would be?
saying that he's
Yeah,
not a 3-star receiver that's limited on his options. This is one of the top 3 wide receivers in the country. He didn't have to be down to Michigan and Syracuse.
yeah, that's true. I think you're right on that part because he could have went to a school that is known for developing receivers like LSU. So I do feel the money did lean towards that.
Yes, he's got 50 offers.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I was starting to kind of, Miami was no, not Miami. Oregon was on that list as a Final Four, so I
Yes.
think they were offered. So you're telling me that these days in recruiting, you feel it's more money heavy in terms of like when they choose their Final Four. You feel it's more who's giving the better offer. That's what you're starting to feel like, or do you feel it's a mix of that and NFL development?
I wish I could tell you otherwise, but of course, we're talking about hundreds of athletes, so they're all different in their approach to their
Okay.
decision. But I got to think that if I had a son and I was counseling him and directing him on who to choose, and the NFL is no guarantee, regardless of how highly rated these kids are coming out of high school,
Hmm.
only 40 some percent of 5 stars make an NFL roster. Now that's significantly higher than 4 stars. So the rating system does work. It does represent how good these kids are in mass, but it's still only like 40 to 45% of 5 stars. So there's no guarantee you're going to make it to the NFL. So the paycheck does matter. But for me, if I'm directing my son, and let's say he's got 3 offers and
Yeah.
they're 2.5, 2.2, and 2.4, then I'm not squabbling over money. I'm taking him to the best destination for relationships with the coaching staff, NFL development, etc. Now, if somebody's offering 4 million, somebody else is offering 2.2 million, then the money would more matter in that situation, depending on the situation with the family. But most people don't have that kind of money, so it does make a big difference if you're talking about 4 million versus 2.5 million.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not gonna lie, I'm really pissed off with recruiting just because of like, these guys getting these like deals and not going to the school they really want, and they're just doing it for the most money, and it's just such a pain, seeing these NIL numbers, and it's like, oh, did you really get? They're like doing these rumors about these offers. It's just really, it's like feels like it's so professional, man. And I'm not gonna lie, Mark, I'm getting the more and more like I'm always gonna watch college football because of Michigan, but the more and more this NIL and recruiting stuff, man, it's just like you really are I'm starting to hate college football more and more and more, even though I'm never gonna stop watching it, it's just such a like this transition that we're doing, it sucks, man. Like, and the conferences alignment, and I don't want more schools to go to the Big Ten because I care about tradition. I'm a Midwest guy, live in Chicago, right? And I do not want no more West Coast schools to come to the Big Ten, and I don't want Clemson or Miami in the future to come to the Big Ten. I just don't want that. It really sucks. That's something I just wanted to also complain about. Really.
I'm right there with you because I'm conflicted about all this too. I'm conflicted because as an American and as a capitalist,
Yeah.
I have no issue with people being able to invest their money however they want. And this sport is generating billions of dollars. Plus, there are investors out there, i.e., boosters, NIL collectives, etc., that want to throw their money at 17-year-old kids. So they should be allowed to do that if they want. We got 15-year-olds on TikToks that are making, all sorts of money hand over fist for making stupid videos. So it's just the world in which we live. So on one hand, I'm all for a free market system. On the other hand, I think there's something morally wrong about guys that have worked trades like plumbing and been electricians and worked hard for years and years and years. And we got teachers, we've got all sorts of people that are productive in society that can only make a certain amount of money versus a guy who can throw a football that's 17 years old that may prove to be a complete bust, that is handed money before he's proven anything at that level.
Yeah, and it's crazy is like the government and all of this, the NCAA, if they could have fixed all this stuff, man. Like, they did not do a plan for this, and it just became a crap show, and now we're in this mess. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're in such a huge mess with this NIL crap, and it can get fixed. I'm telling you, this problems can get fixed. We can eliminate booster money and all this stuff, and then do stuff where, like, the school gets to decide, how much you're worth, and all of this, giving offers and this booster. Like, I don't know, man. It really pisses me off. I'm getting really pissed off on this. But the only positive I see is, okay, a school like Syracuse can get good players, and I'm actually happy for Syracuse landing him because I lived in upstate New York for 3 years, and I followed Syracuse a little.
Well, Burks, unfortunately, we've completely lost you. We can barely hear you now. So you're breaking up, but we kind of got that last point about Syracuse maybe getting some decent players. The problem there is that in football, you need a lot of players. One doesn't do it. Three doesn't do it. You need a lot of players. Maybe the best example of a team that can get by with a handful of really good players, not that they can't. No football team can win 8 or 9 football games in a football season, playing in a decent conference without football players all over the place. So I'm over exaggerating here when I bring up like Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, but that is about the most obvious example to me of a team that was able to win 8, 9, 10 games get to an ACC championship game. Everything had to, the tea leaves had to be just right, and things had to fall just their way, and they had to work the schedule, and they still got blown out by like 4 touchdowns against Clemson that year, but they had other teams beat Clemson for them to get to the ACC championship game. But that team, much like the Syracuse team we're talking about from last season, Kyle McCord throwing for an ACC record yardage total, they basically survived and thrived with a quarterback who knew how to distribute the ball, NFL level quarterback, or in the case of Sam Hartman and Kyle McCord, remains to be seen with McCord, probably more just a great college quarterback, kind of like a, I can't remember the name, Will Greer, West Virginia, Florida. That kind of guy with like 3 receivers. So basically Wake won, not that they didn't have like a good player here, like 1 corner, 1 D tackle, 1 edge, like 2 good offensive linemen. They had other guys, but they did not have droves of talent, like layers of defensive linemen that were top-notch players. No, Wake Forest won those seasons because Sam Hartman threw the ball 50 times and they had 3 receivers. They could go get it. Same thing with Syracuse last year. When Kyle McCord was off, forget it. They're done. Shut them down. They're lousy. They lost by 4 touchdowns to a pretty marginal Pitt team because Kyle McCord threw 5 picks that day. But when he was on, he was on. And so they take it up against a team like Miami, who's better top to bottom, better roster. They come back from 21-0 down because they had that kind of team. Now, Fran Brown, my point to Burks was, I don't know if Fran Brown has proven he's got 1 season in the books, and they fell into Kyle McCord because Ryan Day didn't want him. So they kind of fell into the Kyle McCord situation. They had some players on the outside, and they basically showed us this is how we're going to play football, at least this year. Now, is Syracuse going to be able to play ball like they did last year, this year, with Steve Angeli or Ricky Collins at quarterback? They lost their best wide receiver to Penn State, Trevor Pena. So I don't know if that's sustainable. Again, we're not talking about Lincoln Riley, who's built a complete reputation for a decade plus of churning out excellent quarterbacks, developing them, churning out Heisman trophies and, top 5 offenses in the country and NFL wide receivers year after year after year after year. We're talking about Fran Brown landing a quarterback, putting him together with a couple wide receivers, and maybe they will continue this legacy, but I would have to see it. So I don't know that Calvin Russell made the best decision in the world. If I'm a top 3 wide receiver in the country, I'm not going to Syracuse. If Syracuse 2024 is replicated year after year after year, maybe 5 years from now, I would go to Syracuse, but I'm not going to Syracuse. But I believe that leads me to think that the bag was bigger at Syracuse. And again, Michigan's not a great option for a wide receiver either. To Burke's point, there's a diehard, die-in-the-wool Michigan fan who admits that Michigan doesn't develop wide receivers. And over the last 3 or 4 years, they've done okay with that. It's funny because to me, Michigan is really the first team, along with Illinois, kind of at the same time as Ohio State, Art Schlechter around 1980. Those were the 3 schools, and even Michigan beyond that. They kept it going throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s, that really churned out top-level quarterbacks. They were the first. Well, Purdue was. Purdue has produced the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten in the history of the conference. Purdue's number 1. It's not even close. Purdue is the best producer of quarterbacks in the conference. But they didn't even throw the ball. We're talking Bob Greasy, Len Dawson, Mike Phipps, Gary Danielson, those guys. But it's funny that Michigan is not producing high-level performance at quarterback or wide receiver when, for the longest stretch of time, Michigan was the best at doing that for a long time in the Big Ten in the 80s and 90s. All right. We've got a lot of good people in the chat. This is a stellar day. Doreen's here. Good to see her. Mr. Buckeye, Dr. Buckeye. Apologies, David. Dr. Buckeye in the house, along with Matthew Miller, Moose, LFG, and others. Okay. And again, like I mentioned off the top, it's Big 12 Media Days. This is the second of two. So they move them on through 8 at a time. This is not the SEC, where next week we're going to have 5 days of SEC Media Days. Still only 16 teams in the conference, but the SEC, it means more. So you got to stick around for longer, for the entire week. I think it's 5 days. It might only be 4 days for the SEC, 4 teams per day. But that's it for the Big 12. I've not really looked into anything. Again, we had BYU and Iowa State coverage yesterday, Cincinnati today. We've got Utah, TCU, Arizona State, Utah. I said that. Somebody else, Oklahoma State on tap for the next 2 days on Thursday and Friday. So we will get to those teams. Got a watch party to schedule here. When are we going to do this? I'm kind of thinking maybe Friday. I believe I've got plans for Thursday and Saturday nights, so maybe we'll move it in Friday. We got a watch party. The 2024 Rose Bowl won our watch party poll. If anybody else wants to vote, going once, going twice, if you want to switch up our watch party for July, I can get all this garbage out of the way. And so the deal is we've got a members watch party once a month. So we'll watch vintage games, and then once the season hits, depending on your interest level, we will watch a game every weekend. After the weekend's play, we'll watch whatever your choice is, the game of the week. And it looks like we pretty much got in all of our votes at this point. So I don't expect any more to come in. That's 500 plus. And there it is, the 2024 Rose Bowl win, Michigan over Bama, 47%. So that's our watch party. And I just need to figure out when that's going to be. If you have any suggestions for that. And again, you can join us for the watch party by becoming a member here at the Voice of College Football, either on Patreon or right here on YouTube. And we're going to do that again. That's going to be once a month. We did one in June, July, August. And then the hope is during the season that we take a vote on Sundays, decide what game you want to see, and get together either on Monday or Tuesday nights for the big watch party to watch a current game. Now, that's really good. For as much as I love watching classic college football and games from the past, I'm going to be a little bit more interested and into it when we've got games that just ended on Saturday that are fresh, and we'll rewatch them on Monday or Tuesday. I desperately need some water. Also, keep in mind that we are coming back with the Big Ten Live show in 2 weeks. Can't wait to do that. So that's going to be every Tuesday. Bingo. There it is. The Big Ten Live show premieres July 15th. That's 2 weeks from no. July 15th. What is today? Let's go the next week. July 22nd. That's the week of Big Ten Media Days. So the Big Ten Live show premieres with myself and Corey Bratta 2 weeks from this week. So I believe that's July 22nd. Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time right here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel. Big Ten Live show. We'll have guests. We'll do it up big on the Big Ten every Tuesday. And yes, I am going to get to a national championship reset, a big workshop, live stream. We may be here for 15 hours. And also all-time program rankings. I got to get to work on that. So considering nobody's calling right now, yes, Jackson letting us know Big Ten Media Days are July 22nd, 23rd, 24th. That's a Tuesday through Thursday. And I have yet to find out if we're going, but we may be headed there from the Voice of College Football. If not, no big loss there. You're not going to see me go on any kind of tirade like I did with the SEC because no big loss. It saves me money and the annoyance of travel. But otherwise, if they say yes, then we're going to kick it in and go to Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. So we'll see what they say. We got credentials the last 2 years. Don't know why we wouldn't this time around. All right. I think we get together for either a watch party on Friday night this week, or I'm going to start running through these national championships, do a national championship reset. So be looking out for a late night Friday get together this week. I think we'll be doing that late night on Friday night. I want to remind everyone that the Amazon link's in the description section of this video and all the videos. And I got to tell you, this is a big deal here at the Voice of College Football concerning this Amazon link, because if we had buy-in on this, this could just set us in a good place for a long, long time. So when you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. And it doesn't cost you a penny, and you can contribute to the Voice of College Football that way. Good to see Tim stopping by. Voice of College Football. Who are your top 3 OCs and DCs in the Big Ten? Well, that's a great question. That is a great question. Well, I have posted prediction videos, so I've done a fairly decent deep dive on quite a few teams now. Ohio State, Michigan, USC. I think we did Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Indiana. We did do a lot of teams. Iowa. Wow. I don't want to miss someone, but this is a good point for a video, possibly. Phil Parker of Iowa. It's tough to beat him. Now you got Jim Knowles at Penn State on the defensive side. Those two. All right, off the top of my head, defensive coordinators, I'm going Phil Parker 1, Iowa, Jim Knowles 2, Penn State, and number 3 would be Wink Martindale of Michigan. Offensive coordinators. Well, if we're considering Lincoln Riley's his own offensive coordinator, correct? Then I would consider him to be the best offensive coordinator in the Big Ten. We've got Will Stein at Oregon. Of course, Ryan Day has stepped aside. Chip Kelly's gone. I'm not going to elevate Brian Hartline in any way. He's probably the best recruiter in the Big Ten. Offensive coordinators, Chip Lindsey taking over at Michigan. Did a great job at North Carolina. Give me a rain check on the offensive side. I'm pretty stout and entrenched on the defensive side with those three, with Parker, Knowles, and who'd I say number 3? I forget now. Who is my number 3 defensive coordinator? All right, folks. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We'll be back on, Tim went the Penn State route. I thought about it too. Just didn't want to pull the trigger on that. I think that with Corey Heatherman moving from Minnesota to Miami, that we've got a loss on the defensive side out of the Big Ten. All right, folks, we'll be back on Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And you'll see me with the Miami show at 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We're going to do a little Florida State Miami matchup. So that should be a good time as well. And again, please like on the way out. Please subscribe and use that Amazon link. And we will see you at 7 Eastern on the Miami channel. Clint, that's why you got to show up on time. You know, we're an hour into the show at least, whatever it is. We talked a lot of Big 12. So, Clint, rewind the show. I know you don't want to hear us go on about the Big 10, but we got a lot more Big 12 for you, Clint, the rest of the week. So, hold on. Utah, Arizona State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, other guests Thursday and Friday.